What's up, everyone, and welcome to another daily episode where we're going to talk about phishing attachments with malicious macros and the switch to more advanced techniques of tricking you into opening malicious content. If you don't learn anything else from this episode, you just might learn where to focus more attention to protect yourself and others from this threat.
Oh, drat these computers. They're so naughty and so complex. I could pinch them.
Hackers, who normally distribute malware via phishing attachments with malicious macros, gradually changed tactics after Microsoft Office began blocking them by default, switching to new file types such as ISO, RAR, and Windows shortcut attachments. VBA and XL4 Macros are small programs created to automate repetitive tasks in Microsoft Office applications, which threat actors abuse for loading, dropping, or installing malware via malicious Microsoft Office document attachments sent in phishing emails. So since Microsoft is trying to disable macros on files downloaded from the internet, attackers are now using ISO images, RAR files, .link files, and HTML files to trick you. The reason for the switch is, again, Microsoft announcing that they would end the massive abuse of the Office subsystem by automatically blocking macros by default and making it harder to activate them. Although it took Microsoft a little longer to implement this Microsoft Office change, the block finally entered into effect last week. However, the initial announcement alone convinced malware operators to move away from macros and begin experimenting with alternative methods to infect systems or victims. Again, the reason for the switch is Microsoft announcing that they would end the massive abuse of the Office subsystem by automatically blocking macros by default and making it harder to activate them. And just that announcement was enough to trigger an explosion in new techniques being used. In a new report by Proofpoint, researchers looked at malicious campaign stats between October 2021 and June 2022 and identified a clear shift to other methods of payload distribution, recording a decrease of 66% in the use of macros with an explosion in other methods. At the same time, the use of container files such as ISO, zips, and RARs has grown steadily, rising by almost 175%. That's part of our explosion. So just, again, hearing about Microsoft clamping down on macros saw huge jumps in these new techniques to the tune of an increase of 175%. The use of link files exploded after February 2022, the time of Microsoft's announcement, increasing by a whopping 1,675% compared to October 2021, and being the weapon of choice of 10 individual threat groups tracked by Proofpoint. We have reported on the use of link files by Emotet, Qbot, and Iced ID in all cases, masquerading as a Word document to trick the recipient into opening it. However, these link files can be used to execute almost any command the user has permission to use, including executing PowerShell scripts that download and execute malware from remote sources. So these .link files can be used to execute almost anything, including PowerShell scripts to download malware, and their use has exploded by 1,675% after February 2022. Finally, Proofpoint also observed a significant increase in the use of HTML attachments, adopting the HTML smuggle technique to drop a malicious file on the host system. However, their distribution volumes continue to remain a little bit on the light side, but I'm sure that'll increase. While seeing macros becoming an obsolete method of payload distribution and initial infection is a positive development, the threat has merely shifted rather than being addressed or reduced. So you're dropping one apple to pick up another apple. The question that needs answers now is how that change impacts the effectiveness of the malware campaigns, as convincing recipients to open a doc file or an XS file was a lot easier than asking them to unpack archives and open files whose names end in .link. But that's not the only way they are targeting you. So the use of HTML files has also increased significantly, and many phishing campaigns just include a link to a malicious file somewhere hosted in the cloud. They don't even give an attachment anymore. They use a link to an infected or malicious file hosted somewhere in the cloud, like Dropbox or OneDrive or whatever. Furthermore, to bypass detection by security software, many phishing campaigns now password protect archive attachments, adding another burdensome step a target must take to access the malicious files. So, On the one side, for the attackers, having a password-protected zip file means that most antivirus softwares cannot scan it because it doesn't have the password to unpack it and then scan the contents, but it makes it more difficult or questionable whether or not the recipient of that zip file will, have the patience to unzip it and get the password out of the email, right? From that perspective, threat actors relying on phishing emails might be running out of good options, and their infection rates may have dropped as a result. But considering the increase in these new techniques, including the password-protected RAR files, which I don't think really is a hindrance, ISOs and other ways of packaging that might not have a password, the continued plague of phishing campaigns, I actually don't see this really being the case where it's decreasing. That's just not happening. Finally, email security solutions now have a narrower spectrum of potential risks to evaluate, improving their chances of catching a risky file. Now, that argument is based on Microsoft disabling macros by default. So, in essence, a file that's downloaded from the internet couldn't have a macro enabled or wouldn't really need to be scanned because macros would be disabled, this, that, and the other thing. But even that, I don't see that as being a legitimate reason or anything that we could sleep better at night about. And that's the news. Thanks again for watching. Don't forget to share and subscribe if you have not already, and smash the bell if you have not already. And I'll see you on the next episode. Take care.